Boker Tov and Shabbat Shalom. I hope everyone is well and looking forward to a Shabbat full of peace and rest. I know that I certainly am. In this week's Torah portion of Emor, in chapter 23, we read the calendar of the year, the cycle of the holidays through which our biblical ancestors and we live our lives as Jews. It begins with Pesach, the holiday which starts the Jewish year, falling during Nisan, which is the beginning of the months for us as Jews. What follows is the command to bring an omer's worth of barley, a dry measure equal to about 2.3 liters, to the temple. It served as a remembrance of God's goodness to the people through the bounty of the land. They were to bring this omer, this measure of barley, over a period of 7 weeks, an offering on each of these 49 days. The 50th day became Shavuot, which literally means weeks, referring to the weeks of having counted the omer, the 7 weeks of 7 days. However, as you are aware, since we no longer have the temple in Jerusalem in existence, we are no longer able to offer the grain sacrifice, the omer. Nevertheless, we still count the omer each and every day during the period of time. For example, today, this Friday, is the 29th day of the counting of the omer, which marks 4 weeks and 1 day. The question, however, is why? Why do we continue to count, even though the original reason for doing so, the bringing of the grain offering into the temple in Jerusalem, is no longer valid? So again, why do we still continue to count? There are various explanations. One being the connection that this counting brings between Pesach and Shavuot. The fact that counting these 49 days binds our liberation from slavery in Pesach to the true freedom, the idea that the actualization of our freedom only takes place in the observance of God's laws as found in the Torah, which we received at Shavuot. But there's another interpretation I'd like to share with you. The importance of counting one by one reminds us to never take anything for granted, a very important Jewish value. We should never believe that what has been given us is something that is owed us. Everything that we receive is a blessing, a gift to be treasured. And by counting, we learn to appreciate each and every item and blessing that we have been given. The same is true for people, and especially after the Shoah, the Holocaust. Yes, we often refer to the 6 million, but we must never forget that these were people who were martyred. Fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, children, each with a name, each with an individual and special soul. That was the background to paper clips, to a project which later came out in a documentary of the same name. It tells the story of the Whitwell Middle School in Tennessee, who tried to visualize the enormity of the Holocaust by collecting millions and millions of paper clips in order to visualize the enormity of what took place during the Shoah. If you've never seen this documentary, it's well worth seeing. It represents our ethical sensibilities as Jews, our understanding of people's singular worth and value. We ask in the Talmud, why was Adam created alone? And the answer, to teach us that a person who destroys a single life It is as though he has destroyed an entire world. But a person who saves a single life, it is as though he has saved an entire world. That is the potential that a single human life can have, and each must be valued. It teaches us that each person is unique and special and should never be reduced simply to a number. My friends, numbers are very much a part of our lives during this pandemic. We understand that. We count the numbers of those who have been infected with the virus. We compare the numbers from one country to the next. We do the same in Canada, comparing one province to the next. And at the same time, we track the numbers as they increase and fall day by day by day. But the numbers with which we are most fixated upon, regardless of where we live, are the death tolls of those who have perished, having been stricken by COVID-19. We see and we count, observing how these numbers, these death tolls, have grown throughout the world and in our own community. It's the debate which is now taking place in the discussion about when to reopen our economy and communities more fully. Some say that it must reopen soon, that we must get the economy back up and running and do it as fast as we can, regardless of the fact that it will increase the spread of the virus and those who ultimately may die from it. Now, I appreciate the urgency to get back to some sense of normalcy, to get us back to our routines, to our regular lives. Believe me, I understand. The cost to the economy is overwhelming, and we can't afford to wait any longer, they say. But the death toll numbers represent people, living, breathing, human beings. The question should be phrased to these same people who so desperately want to get the economy up and running is the following. Would you be willing to sacrifice your husband or your wife, your mother, your father, your son, or your daughter to get the economy back up again? I'm not so sure if people would be so willing to move things forward if it was their son or their daughter or their husband or their wife. I'm not quite sure. Fortunately, most people understand that we must move forward slowly and confidently once we have the information on which we need to base these decisions. We shouldn't have to make this as a question of your life or your livelihood. A livelihood, don't forget, can return, though it may take time. A life, however, when it is gone, there is no chance of it ever coming back. Each one of us, each one of you is too precious, too precious to ever consider sacrificing. We must remember that each one who has died was a person with a face, a name, and a spirit. And we must never value a number, whether it's a job or a dollar, over that of a single human being. Shabbat Shalom.